So, David versus Goliath, a vast machinery of greed grinds relentlessly, violating the sanctity of life itself. To the meat industry, it's an inconvenience that animals are living, feeling creatures. To them, animals are just commercialized units, part of a mechanized, monolithic machine of death. I've been inside countless numbers of factory farms over the years and know the hideous cruelty that's meted out daily to these innocent beings. The meat industry is responsible for the most appalling, bloody and shameful massacre of animals, and ironically for being the main driver of chronic disease in the people who eat those animals and the number one cause of death of wild animals. So how big is this Goliath, this instrument of death? The market value of the global meat industry is now around $1 trillion. In 2022, the value of the dairy industry worldwide was in the region of $890 billion. So together, almost $2 trillion. And what about David, the hero of the animals? The global plant-based food market is now valued at $65 billion this year and expected to more than double to about 162 by 2030. Of course, that's versus almost 2 trillion of the meat and the dairy industries. But remember, what do we mean when we say the plant-based food market? We're really talking about a market that's dominated by fake meats and plant-based dairy. The stats, of course, don't include things like vegetables and fruits and pulses and so on, which in their own right is a huge market. It's been amazing to see the plant-based market grow relatively quickly in the last few years. But what we really need to know is what is meat consumption in the UK. We've all looked at surveys, and I'm going to show you one in a minute, but the actual reality of meat consumption, is it going up? Is it going down? Or has it plateaued? So I looked at meat consumption per person in the UK, and according to DEFRA, consumers have reduced their combined household consumption of beef, pig meat, sheep and lamb by 62% from the 1980s through to today. Beef has been cut back the most. If you want to know the actual figures, 14.5 kilograms per capita, that's per person annually in 1980, to 5 kilograms in 2022. So people in the UK are in fact consuming less meat than at any point since records on this began. And an Oxford University analysis of meat eating in the UK, which was published in The Lancet, says that from 2008 to 19, the average total meat consumption per person per day decreased from 104 to 86 grams. So again, just confirming the other stats. Basically, when you think about that, why is meat consumption dropping in the UK when we have more opportunity to buy whatever it is that we want? There are conscious decisions going on there behind this, clearly. And in fact, vegetarian campaigning started for the first time in the 1980s, and Viva, continuing that, which was formed, of course, 30 years ago now in the 90s, campaigned on all fronts, but especially at the beginning on investigations and exposing factory farming for the first time, really, in the UK. And then expanding those campaigns into Viva Health, into Viva Planet, and the lifestyle issues, actually helping people change. Remember, we were the first organisation to set up vegan festivals on our 10th anniversary, and look how those have blossomed. The landscape has changed phenomenally in 30 years. It's not a coincidence that people are making these choices. So what about the UK number of vegans and meat-free people? So let's just have a quick look at those stats. So the number of vegans and meat-free in the UK, 2.5 million adults, so this is adults only, are vegan, over 3 million vegetarian, 3 million pescatarian, So that means almost 9 million people are meat-free. And then you've got flexitarians. In this particular survey, they were categorised as people who ate meat once a month or less, so very infrequently. That was 7 million people. So out of 54 million adults in the UK, 16 million have made very significant choices to replace meat with plant-based foods. So why? It will not surprise you at all that animals first. Environment second. It used to be health. It switched around. Health third. So concern for all of those issues becomes more intense. It goes up when you move from vegetarian to vegan. No surprise there. And a Viva survey just this year, 82%, so over 4/5 of people were vegetarian before they went vegan. So looking there, you can see how the United Kingdom is a real world leader in terms of veganism. And you'll know all this. The vegan options, you've seen them firsthand expanding in the national chains. So where are people hearing the information that influences them to go vegan? So the top 3 were friends, family and colleagues. No surprise there. You directly influence who you know. Of course you do. Social media, the internet and YouTube were second, and third, Viva. Oh, thank you. And of course, some of that information to the friends, family and colleagues, social media would have come from Viva. So documentaries and outreach then came next. So all really important ways of changing people around you. And as you know, on the run up to 2020, vegan was in as far as the media were concerned. There was an absolute explosion, a plethora in terms of the media talking about veganism in a relatively positive light, especially compared to how they used to talk about it when I set up Viva, which was very much green radicals, fanatics and the rest of it. And then what happened? Wham! It was as if, after all those years of loving plant-based meats, meat eaters have suddenly turned the packaging around and actually read the ingredients. And even though those same ingredients were in the everyday foods they were eating, for some, it was back to meat. You'd think that the meat industry had orchestrated the whole thing itself. And guess what? It did. So the meat industry went into overdrive. And their major offensive is actually to depopularize fake or alternative meats. And it all started with this ad. Have a little look.
Your word is methylcellulose.
Can you please define that?
Methylcellulose. It's a chemical laxative that is also used in synthetic meat.
Why?
Sorry, incorrect.
Spell propylene glycol.
What's that?
Propylene glycol. It's a chemical used in antifreeze and synthetic meats.
P-O...
You might need a PhD to understand what's in synthetic meat. Fake bacon and burgers can have dozens of chemical ingredients. If you can't spell it or pronounce it, maybe you shouldn't be eating it. Go to cleanfoodfacts.com.
Bacon. B-A-C-O-N.
Yeah, quite. I mean, it's a clever marketing tactic, actually, used to keep the consumers from looking at the meat industry's own bloody secret, and that is that there's a process, we're talking about process, required to turn animals into meat too. And it's much, much worse. So that was a $5 million commercial. Who was behind it? Let's have a look. So this guy, Richard Berman, founder for the Centre for Organisational Research and Education, formerly the Centre for Consumer Freedom. So he's described by Forbes as, I quote, a front group for meat, tobacco and alcohol companies. Yeah, nice company he keeps, eh? He's the man who wants to convince America beef is healthier than the meatless burgers. And his corporate front groups even did things like play down the dangers of drunken driving In fact, one of his front groups was specifically set up to belittle mothers against drunk driving. And secondhand smoke, he said, no problems with it, argues obesity is not a public health issue, and it's all under the guise of public interest advocacy, without disclosing the clients who pay his company, of course. So kind of the king of evil, but unfortunately effective. So I just showed you one of the ads that we started with. So I had a look at the ingredients of plant-based burgers and sausages. I couldn't actually find any in the UK with propylene glycol, but several, of course, contain methyl cellulose. So what is it? So it's made from cellulose, which, of course, you'll all remember probably from your biology days at school. Cellulose is in the cell walls of plants. It's been ruled safe by just about every authority because there have been no adverse side effects when it's normally consumed. I'm not suggesting that we all sit down to a meal of methyl cellulose, but nevertheless, the cheeky, excuse my language, but the cheeky bastards, when the meat eaters, when the meat industry are using methyl cellulose as a main ingredient in processed meat and in dairy products, and yet have managed to persuade the flexitarians that somehow these plant-based burgers are a lesser food. And, they have done quite an incredible marketing job on this. I mean, if you look at something like, there's a study in America of 300 ground beef samples, and they found that every single sample had poo bacteria on it. So how about a campaign doing that? Every time you eat beef, you eat poo. Do you think that would go down well? Because let's look at the process that these animals go through to actually end up on your plate. But this is the reality of what has been happening. And the other thing, of course, that needs to be played up much more, just the truth basically, is that the World Health Organization classed processed meat as a carcinogen several years ago now. But most people still do not know that that is the case, and that red meat is probably carcinogenic, so connected to several types of cancers. So in the UK, the meat industry's tactics have led to thousands, and I'm talking thousands of media features saying that veganism is bad for your health. So I'll just give you one headline out of the many. The unhealthy secret about the vegan food you're eating. So this was based, as you can see from the slide, on a published review of 57 peer-reviewed papers that were published between that 6-year period. And in fact, what the paper was actually saying was that so-called novel plant-based foods have substantially lower environmental impacts than animal-based foods, but the nutritional contents are complex, I quote, and vary considerably across brands, type, and main primary ingredient. In the limited evidence that is available on the health impacts, shifting from animal-based foods to plant-based meats is actually associated with positive health outcomes. How do you go from that, a review of 57 really good scientific papers, to a headline saying the unhealthy secret about the vegan food you're eating? And this is what we're up against with mainstream media. I'll just give you one more quick example because I want you to really grasp this, that the preparedness to diminish the positivity of going vegan at a time when, of course, it was exploding. What it meant and what they were really scared of is that the flexitarians, the meat reducers, were turning to vegan foods as a norm. They weren't thinking about it. It was just becoming mainstream. And that scared them, that panicked them to death. Because once you start down that process, although these people may not jump to being vegan, they may not be vegan ever, the actual impact on the meat industry is absolutely gigantic. And that is why they have responded and put everything into this. And this is what I want you to make you realise what is happening. So the Daily Mail headline, another example, the proof going vegan isn't better for you. So, and the first line of the article, going vegan will not improve your health, an experiment suggests. An experiment. In fact, the study co-author, who was a lecturer in nutrition science, said, So I'm going to quote directly from this person. As it stands, the plant-based meat alternatives currently available do not offer the same health advantages as a traditional plant-based diet, generally consisting of whole foods such as whole grains, legumes, and a plethora of fruits and vegetables. I mean, come on, no shit, Sherlock. The science is saying junk plant-based foods are not as good for you as whole food vegan foods. But the vegan diets are full of the good stuff and are the best. That is not the same as saying going vegan isn't better for your health, is it? In fact, what the scientists are saying, come on vegans, go back to eating a whole food diet. That is the best type of diet. But if you're going to eat junk foods, for goodness sake, eat plant-based ones. Completely different line. So other types of ads are just lies by distortion or by omission. They imbue nostalgia for the so-called olden days. They use the animals themselves in cartoon ads to say that they're happy to give their milk. You know, Arla, who operates zero grazing, where those animals who never get to graze a blade of grass, have an ad saying everybody's free. There's never a hint of the life and the death of those animals, is there? I've never seen a Danish bacon ad showing pigs being gassed to death. I've never seen a Muller ad where a day-old calf has been wrenched from their mother. I've never seen a New Zealand lamb ad showing a baby being loaded onto a truck and brutally robbed of their life. They focus on the final products like this Muller ad. So I'm just going to show you Viva's take on this and what we did about it.
New from Killer Yogurts. The umbilical cord flavor. Produced with only the finest ingredients. The stolen milk of grieving mothers. Taste the torment in every mouthful. Blended with brutality. Be complicit. With Killer Yogurts. It's a killer. These Muller cows have never grazed a blade of grass. All mothers have their newborn babies stolen. Baby calves are denied their mother's love. Mother cows are killed when their milk production falls. Many newborn babies are slaughtered.
I thought you'd like to see that. Maybe no surprise to you, it's actually banned. But we had 3 months of really pushing the ad and it went viral. And then, when it was banned, the ASA, Advertising Standards, did not contest a single fact in that ad. They didn't say anything was wrong with what we were saying. And they even admitted it came down to personal judgment as to whether it caused offence. And they decided it did. And guess how many complaints they got out of millions of people who'd seen it by that point? They got 1 complaint. I wonder who that was from. But they did not get this deluge from the public. Most of the public these days understand that these issues really matter. I think it ended up with a total of 7 complaints, that is all. And yet, this may not have happened, but it did. Through banning it, it just exploded globally. It led to me being on the Piers Morgan show. It meant that the ad itself was embedded in the biggest news online platform in the world, and many, many, many others. And so its reach was about 1.2 billion. So thank you for complaining about it, whoever that may have been. Then other ads, you know, that you may not even notice. If you look at that with this one, it's the lioness ad, and the slogan is "Eat like a lioness," and this is from the AHDB, Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, and they confuse people. There's basically all of their ads say that meat and dairy are healthy. That's the line that they go down. But eat like a lioness, there's a slight problem with that. We ain't lions, are we? We're great apes. And the embodiment of marketing bullshit, won't surprise you who I'm talking about, Red Tractor, of course, who time and time again, just about every factory farm we've gone in and exposed has been Red Tractor approved, including Hogwood and including Flathouse. These are some of the farms that Viva has exposed. You see the turkey farm there, people hitting the dairy cows repeatedly, which we filmed secretly, and the state of that poor pig there, just left in utter abandonment and neglect. And the next tactic that they're taking is actually to ban the alternatives. Now the irony of their language. So cultivated meat has now been banned in 2 states in the USA. I'm sure you know, or some of you will know. You know, this smacks to me of desperation. So in May, just this year, Florida banned the sale of what they call cell-based meat, so cultivated meat. And they said, today, Florida is fighting back against the global elite's plan to force the world to eat meat grown in a petri dish to achieve their authoritarian goals. You see how they twist things round all the time. They are the ones who have banned the choice and taken away the right to have an option, and they call the other side authoritarian. And they plant in people's minds conspiracy theories. They're quite clever because a certain type of people fall for this. And then a day later, Alabama followed in banning lab-grown meat. Alabama prohibits the manufacture, sale or distribution of food products from cultured animal cells. And they don't try and actually pretend about the reason to do with health or something like that. They actually just said, for example, in Florida, we stand with the cattle ranchers, we stand with our farmers. And in Alabama, beef production, although it's the focus of a massive raging debate on climate change, and they've admitted it's a major contributor to global house methane emissions, rather than help people find solutions and to go vegan, they actually ban the alternatives to that. This is quite a crazy world sometimes, isn't it? And then more disinformation to stop progress. One important example, the Eat Lancet report. So, the Eat Lancet Commission consists of 37 world leading scientists from 16 different countries and from various scientific disciplines. And their goal that they were given was for the first time to reach a scientific consensus by defining the targets for healthy diets and sustainable food production worldwide. Okay? So the findings of that, some of the quotes are very powerful. As you see there, a radical transformation of the global food system is urgently needed. The global food production threatens our climate stability and ecosystem resilience and constitutes the single largest driver of environmental degradation. Food is the single strongest lever to optimize human health and environmental sustainability on planet Earth. And they called for a 50% reduction in red meat consumption globally. A 50% reduction with urgency. And the UK Lancet report stated, in the UK, research groups have suggested beef consumption needs to decrease by 89%. We need to almost eradicate it just to stay within planetary boundaries. You can imagine what the meat industry's response is to this. Basically, scientists worldwide now are saying this industry should be dismantled, and that the funding should be put into a plant-based sustainable future. And so these measures that they're taking are sort of the throes of a literally dying industry, but one that at the moment still has great power. But I'm telling you this because I want you to talk to people and make them understand what is happening. And I'll give you one example of the backlash to this very campaign. So it was funded by the livestock feed industry in this case, huge industry, and they launched a campaign called #YesToMeat. And to understand its impact, 8.5 million tweets connected to this report and to the Yes to Meat were analysed. So Yes to Meat, they launched it 1 week before the report was launched, during the actual launch and after, and they analysed the responses of people to the Yes to Meat campaign, and basically found that the counter campaign achieved what it set out to do, which was to create doubt, to create false narratives, to derail and to deflect. And I'll just give you another quick example, which is social media, which of course you're all going to be familiar with. We thought years ago, when social media really started to get a grip, that it was a good thing in terms of putting us on a more level playing field with the meat industry. Because if you remember before that, if we wanted to place, for example, a press ad, you were talking tens of thousands of pounds to get a single page or a double page spread, which the meat industry, by the way, that was a major tactic of theirs back then. Lots and lots of press advertising, and we just could not compete. So social media changed the game. But now the meat industry is using social media again to derail. So an example is artificial intelligence. So you all know AI-powered social media bots. They amplify misinformation. So they create, the meat industry, false accounts that give not just false information, but the illusion of online support for what they are saying. And that results in real support. And they operate on a scale which is hard for us to imagine. It is actually gargantuan. The AI bots now simulate emotions, personalized interactions with the users. They're controlled by people who want to sway public opinion, and they become very lifelike and hard to detect. They mimic real user interactions, they mislead audiences. So the meat industry would launch a campaign saying meat is great. They would inflate its popularity. They'd produce content intended to confuse, to mislead, to deflect. If you want, have a look at the hashtag YesToMeat on your Insta account, and you'll find everything from the meat diet gave me cancer remission, the meat diet made me slim, meat is a vital source of nutrients, you can't get B12 on a vegan diet, you were lied to about meat consumption and heart disease, and even vegetables are not as healthy as you think. Lots of anti-plant-based meats, and so it goes on and on and on and on and on. Facebook, so Meta, just this year, I had a look at their, if you want to Google it, it's from a report called Meta's Transparency Report on Fake Accounts. It's quite staggering. In 2024, for the first quarter, I think it was, Meta reported over 3 billion active monthly users across the world. And of those, Facebook stated 827 million accounts are fake. It's quite incredible. And lastly, before I move on, just think about the tactics of mainstream media. I showed you some of the tactics before, which is basically downright deliberately misreporting on the science. So we mentioned disinformation, but there's also willful omission of the true facts. And just one example of that, there was a data analysis of reporting on the climate crisis last year, 2023. And out of 1,100 articles that were covering reasons for the climate crisis, only 7% mention animal agriculture. So there's willful omission of talking about the damage that consuming animals is doing. With veganism, and despite all of this, we are doing pretty damn well in the UK. We are world leaders in veganism. What we do have on our side is truth. It's manifestly obvious that hurting animals, hurting our own health, hurting our home and all her life support systems is insane. It's ignorant. And Viva has campaigned on all of these fronts for 30 years. Just a quick look at some of those campaigns. And I'm just going to play you another little very quick video we produced that went viral. So it's our take on the environmental issues.
The Arctic Ocean is heating up at a much faster pace than the rest of the Earth. Temperatures over parts of the Arctic will increase as much as 54 degrees Fahrenheit this month.
Our house is on fire. Our house is falling apart.
The state of the planet is broken. Dear friends, humanity is waging war on nature. This is suicidal. Nature always strikes back, and it is already doing so with growing force and fury.
When you eat a burger, it's not just the cow who dies. Producing meat, fish, and dairy is the main driver for wiping out the world's wildlife, for trashing trees, and causing our oceans to collapse.
That video again was extremely popular when we launched and hit the 1 million mark quite a while ago. The point is, you don't get 9 million people rejecting meat in the UK and then millions on top of that going flexitarian for no reason at all. It happens because people are being educated, about these major issues, about the animal cruelty, the disgusting obscenity of what killing these animals is doing to them and to our planet. But also there's more education about what it's doing to us and the impact it's having on our own health, especially at a time when the NHS continues to collapse and all we are offered, usually by our GPs, is drugs as the way forward. So it is within our reach to change the narrative, to paint a vibrant future where humanity acts in unison with nature rather than in opposition, rather than a harbinger of its demise. The first step towards this future has to be veganism. As you have seen, the UK is changing. Those 9 million who rejected meat and all the brainwashing around it, it's a recognition that there's something fundamentally wrong with what we have normalised as a society. It's shunning a future of environmental catastrophes and all the despair that they will create. Animal cruelty, ill health, mass extinctions, and it's embracing the hope of a future in which our children and theirs live in a world that's filled with beauty, where our practices respect and protect beauty rather than always destroy. It seems incomprehensible that anyone would want to stop the spread of veganism when you have the facts, when you open your heart, when you open your mind to the plight of these animals and of our world. But the meat industry still wields its greedy power. Our battle is a true David versus Goliath struggle. We face colossal corporations with immense resources, influence and government backing. Yet like David, we're armed with our own weapons, truth, compassion and steely determination to stand up for those who can't. They want lies over truth. They want profit over life and exploitation over compassion. But the truth will never go away. And so long as we're here to speak it, so long as we're here to expose it, and you are here to support us. And everybody here represents one thing, and that is hope, because we've seen that they are scared of us, of the public waking up to the damage that they're causing, to the reality of their brutality. We created that change together, so our hope is not fleeting, it's steadfast. We've latched on, and we won't let go until that giant comes tumbling down.